Ahsoka was faced with a desperate situation. Falsely accused of sabotaging the Jedi Temple and murdering members of the Order, she found herself cornered by forces beyond her control. The evidence, although fragile and circumstantial, was skillfully manipulated by an undercover agent from the dark side of the Force, someone who knew where to strike to shake the foundations of trust in the Jedi Order. Ahsoka, loyal to the Jedi and dedicated to the balance of the Force, never imagined that she would face such an accusation. However, she felt the tension of war and knew that this internal betrayal could mean something far greater than she or anyone else could understand at the time. She realized that, even within the walls of the Jedi Temple, no one was safe from the wiles of darkness. Ahsoka's trial was swift, but no less devastating. Amid the chaos of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order was divided and steeped in mistrust. The masters who had once guided Ahsoka and taught her the principles of the Force now seemed cold and distant, focused only on preserving the Order and the appearance of justice. Unable to bear the feeling of betrayal and the weight of being treated like a criminal, Ahsoka decided to flee. She left behind the temple she had once called home, carrying with her a mixture of sadness, revolt, and disbelief. Fleeing, for her, was not just a matter of survival, but a silent cry that something was terribly wrong within the institution that was supposed to protect the galaxy. Anakin Skywalker, her master and friend, felt deeply shaken by it all. The guilt of having failed to protect Ahsoka consumed him, and he refused to accept what had happened. Determined not to let her face this situation alone, Anakin followed after her, leaving the battles and his responsibilities behind temporarily. For a while, he decided to stay by Ahsoka's side, trying to calm her mind and ease the emotional burden that weighed on both of them. He was determined to try to convince her to return, believing that there was still a chance to right this injustice. However, something inside him was beginning to realize that his trust in the Jedi Order was irreparably shaken. As the days passed, Anakin and Ahsoka found themselves increasingly distanced from the rigidity of the Jedi Order. The unjust accusation against Ahsoka served as the trigger for them to question everything they believed in. The bureaucracy that governed the Order now seemed stifling and inflexible, unable to see the truth or adapt to the needs of a time of war. Anakin, who had always struggled to control his emotions and followed his instinct with fervor, found an echo in Ahsoka, who was also beginning to question the role of the Jedi in the galaxy. For both of them, the Order no longer represented the ideal they had once promised to protect. Instead, it seemed more like a prison of unattainable ideals and rules that repressed their true connection to the Force. As they fled and searched for answers, both Anakin and Ahsoka decided to develop a deeper understanding of the Force, each in their own way. Although their interpretations were different, they both shared a common desire: to free themselves from the dogmas that imprisoned their spirits. Anakin, with his intense and passionate vision, believed that the Force should be a path of power, while Ahsoka, more cautious and reflective, saw it as a path of balance and harmony. The communion of these visions could lead them to a unique and personal understanding of the Force, something that went beyond the limitations imposed by the Jedi. Together, they began to explore this freer and more individualistic perspective, seeking a path that was truly their own. Another factor that fueled Anakin's desire to leave the Order was his relationship with Padmé Amidala. He was torn between the deep love he felt for her and the vows he had taken as a Jedi, vows that demanded detachment and the absence of personal ties. Anakin suffered from the secret because he knew that such an intense relationship was condemned by the Order, but at the same time, he couldn't deny the feeling that filled him whenever he was by Padmé's side. The connection between them was intense, genuine, something that Anakin believed to be as pure as the Force itself. Every day, he found himself less connected to Jedi values and more attracted to a life where he could live his love to the full. Certain of his decision, Anakin decided to leave the Jedi Order and invited Ahsoka to follow him on this journey. He suggested that they move to Naboo, Padmé's home planet, where they could live in peace and away from the incessant conflicts of the galaxy. In addition, Anakin proposed that he and Ahsoka continue her training, but in a different way, free from the rigid impositions of the Order. The idea of developing a new vision of the Force and a new relationship between Master and Padawan seemed the ideal choice for both of them. They would seek a path that would connect them more intensely with the Force without losing the freedom to follow their own beliefs. Ahsoka was deeply moved by the invitation. She had never imagined that Anakin would be willing to break with the Order so decisively, and the trust he placed in her touched her deeply. For Ahsoka, this proposal was not only an offer of new training, but also proof that her master believed in her potential and was willing to walk by her side, regardless of the rules of the Jedi. Moved by her friendship and affection for Anakin, she accepted the offer, determined to build something new alongside him, far from the old paradigms of the Order. With his heart set on it, Anakin went to announce his departure to the Jedi Council. There was a lot of tension in the air. Obi-Wan, always his mentor and friend, tried to persuade him to reconsider, reminding him of his responsibilities and the legacy he carried as a Jedi. Master Yoda, for his part, warned Anakin of the dangers he would face being outside the Order's protection, reminding him that the dark side lurked especially for those who were vulnerable and distant from the Jedi teachings. Anakin listened to his master's words with respect, but deep down he felt that his path was set and that nothing would change his mind. After saying goodbye to the Jedi Temple, Anakin and Ahsoka left for Naboo. When they arrived, they were greeted by Padme, who was already waiting for them with joy and anticipation. In a moment of relaxation, Anakin held out his hand to Padme and, turning to Ahsoka, said that he needed to tell her something important. Before he could continue, Ahsoka, with a smile on her lips, interrupted. "I knew it!" The three of them burst into laughter, sealing a new chapter in their lives, marked by sincerity and complicity. Then, after discovering that she was pregnant, Anakin and Padme made their union official, celebrating their love without the need to hide anything else. For Padme, having Ahsoka by her side as a friend and ally was a great comfort and, over time, the two grew even closer, developing a relationship of sisterhood and trust. Ahsoka, who had always sought a female figure to look up to, found in Padme an example of courage and diplomacy, and the two quickly became inseparable. Meanwhile, Anakin and Ahsoka continued their training together, but now from a new perspective. Instead of focusing exclusively on the technical aspects of the Force, as the Jedi Order taught, Anakin encouraged Ahsoka to explore a more emotional and intuitive connection with the Force. They sought to understand the Force through their own feelings and experiences, developing an approach that balanced reason with intuition. This new method brought deep learning for both of them, helping them to connect with the Force in a freer and more personal way. In addition to their training, Anakin and Ahsoka began taking part in diplomatic and security missions on Naboo. Padme, even though she had set aside some of her political responsibilities, shared her experience and teachings, especially with Ahsoka. The young Jedi admired Padme deeply, seeing her as a true inspiration and a sisterly figure who guided her on her journey to maturity. Their relationship was one of mutual support and growth, and Ahsoka felt that she had finally found a home. Over time, Anakin and Ahsoka realized that they had developed leadership skills that went beyond what they had learned as Jedi. On Naboo, far from the bonds of the Order, they began to refine their strategic capabilities and deal with political and security issues, necessary preparations to face the challenges that the galaxy could bring. With Padme's guidance and mutual learning, they both grew as leaders and as people, ready to make decisions that could change the fate of those around them. When Palpatine heard that Anakin had left the Jedi Order, his eyes lit up with a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. Anakin's departure represented a unique opportunity for his plans of domination, for the young Jedi was more powerful and promising than any other warrior he had ever met. Even his current apprentice, Count Dooku, who had already proved to be a powerful ally, lacked Anakin's raw potential and intensity. For Palpatine, Anakin was the ideal person to be at his side during the future empire he planned to establish. With his ability to manipulate, Palpatine began to get closer to Anakin, offering him frequent invitations to become his advisor on defense matters. He praised Anakin for his courage, his strength, and the rebellious spirit that set him apart from the more orthodox Jedi. For the young Jedi, being recognized by the Chancellor of the Republic, the most powerful figure in the galaxy, was an honor and a sign that his life had purpose. Palpatine knew exactly how to inflame Anakin's pride and plant seeds of admiration and loyalty that could germinate in the future. For a moment, Anakin felt like accepting Palpatine's offer. The idea of serving the Republic directly, working alongside someone so influential, seemed like a unique opportunity to make a difference in the galaxy. In addition, Palpatine's praise fed his vanity and gave him a feeling of value and importance. However, his peaceful life on Naboo, alongside Padme and Ahsoka, filled all the gaps he felt in his heart. On Naboo, he had the love, friendship, and purpose he had sought so much in the Jedi Order. Not giving up on his strategy, Palpatine then suggested that Anakin become Naboo's representative for strategic defense matters for the Republic. That way, he could be closer to the center of political decisions without having to give up his new life on Naboo. Padme, who believed in the importance of strong and capable leadership to protect the galaxy, encouraged Anakin to accept the invitation, as she knew he had the necessary skills to represent Naboo with honor. Ahsoka, on the other hand, felt that there was something strange about Palpatine's extreme friendliness and his insistence. But in the end, Anakin decided to accept the proposal, with Ahsoka always at his side, ready to support and protect him. For Palpatine, however, the real challenge was not just to have Anakin as an ally, but to awaken in him the emotions that would lead him to the dark side. He knew that, in order to corrupt Anakin, he would need to provoke in him primitive and intense feelings, those that could break the inner peace that the young Jedi was experiencing on Naboo. Palpatine knew that Anakin harbored a dark side within him, and that all it would take was one push for him to access this inner strength. With this in mind, he prepared a calculated plan to put Anakin to the test. Palpatine then simulated an ambush before a strategic meeting with Anakin, ensuring that Count Dooku would be seen as responsible. When Anakin and Ahsoka arrived at the Chancellor's office for the meeting, they found Dooku at Palpatine's side. The sight of the old enemy rekindled in Anakin memories of his previous battle with the Count, where he had almost lost his life, saved only by Yoda's intervention. The tension in the air was palpable, and Palpatine watched intently, studying Anakin's every reaction, hoping that the confrontation would bring out the young man's darker side. Feeling the weight of the moment, Anakin asked Ahsoka to step aside and stand guard so that he could face Dooku alone. The two warriors soon engaged in a fierce battle, but this time Anakin was even more powerful and confident than before. He quickly dominated the duel, disarming the Count and cutting off both his hands. With his two sabers pointed at Dooku's neck, Anakin was about to deliver the final blow, while Palpatine watched the scene with a subtle glow of satisfaction. Palpatine, in a somber tone, whispered to Anakin, "Do it." However, Anakin's harmonious life on Naboo, alongside Padme and Ahsoka, had given him an emotional balance that didn't exist in the original timeline. Anakin now possessed an inner peace that kept him from the destructive impulse Palpatine had hoped to see emerge. He resisted the command, took a deep breath and stepped back, lowering his sabers. Anakin had chosen not to give in to hatred, preferring a path of justice rather than revenge. While Anakin decided Dooku's fate, Ahsoka watched her master's attitude with wide eyes. She knew how intense the conflict between them was and recognized the difficulty of resisting Palpatine's pressure. However, Anakin collected his sabers and did something that surprised everyone. He decided to capture Dooku and bring him to trial, demonstrating that, despite everything, his heart was at peace and guided by a strong sense of justice. Palpatine's expression wavered for a brief moment, disappointed by Anakin's decision. He hadn't counted on the emotional resilience the young man had built up on Naboo, nor on the positive influence Padme and Ahsoka had on him. For Palpatine, this was an unexpected setback in his plans to manipulate Anakin to the dark side. However, he knew that there was still time and future opportunities to break Anakin's resistance. Anakin then tied Dooku up and took him into custody, ignoring the looks of surprise and disapproval that Palpatine threw his way. The decision to put Dooku on trial was a symbol of his unwillingness to be corrupted, even in a situation where violence seemed to be the easiest way out. Anakin believed that by protecting his values, he was also protecting the integrity of the Force and the balance he so desperately wanted to achieve in his life. Palpatine's attitude during the confrontation with Count Dooku made Ahsoka even more suspicious of the Chancellor. The fact that he had encouraged Anakin to kill Dooku in such a cold and calculating way was too strange and dark for a leader of the Republic. Something didn't add up, and Ahsoka, ever attentive to the subtle signs of the Force, began to suspect that there were more secrets involving Palpatine than she could imagine. That insistence that Anakin execute Dooku seemed like a deliberate attempt to awaken something dark in him, as if Palpatine had hidden intentions that went far beyond a simple position in the Senate. Worried by what she had witnessed, Ahsoka shared her concerns with Anakin and Padme. Padme, who had known Palpatine for a long time, initially tried to defend the Chancellor's integrity, but Ahsoka's doubts made her reflect. There was something about the way Palpatine behaved that didn't seem to fit the image of a leader dedicated to peace. Anakin and Ahsoka spent hours discussing the possibility that Palpatine could be the Sith Lord the Jedi had been searching for since Qui-Gon Jinn's death. The idea seemed absurd and frightening, but it made sense as they analyzed the Chancellor's history and recent actions. This time, Palpatine didn't have the elements that led him to corrupt Anakin in the original timeline. There were no visions of Padme's death to manipulate his emotions, and Anakin's emotional balance, along with his peaceful life on Naboo, shielded him from falling into the traps of fear and anger. Palpatine had lost his main weapons of manipulation, and Anakin, with the trust he cultivated alongside Ahsoka and Padme, was increasingly immune to the dark side's empty promises. After much thought and discussion, Anakin decided it was time to expose his Padawan's suspicions to the Jedi Council. He and Ahsoka presented themselves to the Council in a reserved audience, where they exposed Palpatine's suspicious attitudes, especially the order to kill Dooku. Although some masters were skeptical, the evidence brought by Anakin and Ahsoka was enough to prompt a serious investigation. After the hearing, the two returned to Naboo, knowing that they had planted the seed of truth and that the Council would act soon. Mace Windu, determined to prevent any threat to the Order and the Republic, decided to act. He gathered together some of the most skilled and trusted Jedi to confront Palpatine and arrest him if Anakin and Ahsoka's suspicions were confirmed. On arriving at the Chancellor's office, Windu and the other masters were met by fierce resistance. Palpatine, revealing himself as the Sith Lord, reacted violently, exterminating the Jedi who accompanied him one by one. In the end, only Mace Windu was left to face him, and an intense battle ensued between the two. During the duel, Palpatine was pressured and eventually defeated by Windu. About to strike the final blow, Windu was surprised by the arrival of Count Dooku, who attacked the Jedi Master, giving the confrontation a new twist. What Windu didn't know was that Palpatine had secretly released Dooku from custody. The Sith had restored the Count, replacing his missing hands with robotic prostheses and giving him a new lightsaber, with the promise that together they would take Anakin to the dark side. Convinced by Palpatine's manipulation, Dooku believed that his role was fundamental to fulfilling this dark objective. While Dooku confronted Windu, Palpatine took advantage of the distraction to escape and activated Order 66. The command, which had long been prepared to exterminate the Jedi, was activated in secret, and in every corner of the galaxy, clones turned their weapons against their masters and Padawans. The betrayal was swift and lethal, catching the Jedi Order completely off guard and spreading chaos throughout the galaxy. Palpatine's plan was finally underway, and the destruction of the Jedi seemed inevitable. Windu, after an intense and exhausting battle, finally managed to defeat Dooku, but when he looked around, he realized that it was already too late. The message of Order 66 had been sent, and the massacre of the Jedi was underway. Each defeat of the Jedi represented another victory for the dark side, and Windu, even with his courage and determination, knew that the Order's survival was gravely threatened. With the massacre of the Jedi Order underway, only Mace Windu, Yoda, and Obi-Wan Kenobi remained as survivors of the Jedi Council. They were at different points in the galaxy when Order 66 was activated, but they all felt the weight of loss and the devastation that was befalling the Republic. In a last-ditch effort to save those who still had hope of resisting Palpatine's rule, Obi-Wan decided to send a message to Anakin on Naboo, warning him to flee with Ahsoka before the extermination reached them. On receiving Obi-Wan's message, Anakin felt the responsibility he had always believed he carried. Inside him, an intuition warned him that this was the moment he had been prepared for all his life. He began to realize that his destiny as the Chosen One, the one who would bring balance to the Force, was finally unfolding. It was as if every choice and every lesson had led him to that decisive moment when the dark side's force threatened to overwhelm the galaxy. Anakin knew that the Force was out of balance and that he was the only one with the power to restore it. With this realization becoming increasingly clear, he decided that he couldn't run away. Instead, he had to confront the source of this imbalance: Palpatine. He knew that this decision would put everything he loved at risk, but he also understood that without this courage, the entire galaxy could succumb to the Dark Empire. It was time to act and face the dark side head-on. Before leaving, Anakin went to Padme and asked her to hide with Ahsoka. He knew that their safety was paramount and that he would face the unimaginable to ensure that they were protected. Ahsoka, however, refused to stay behind and insisted that she wanted to fight alongside her master. Anakin, with a firm look on his face, explained that her responsibility now was to protect Padme and her children, should anything happen to him. Reluctantly, Ahsoka agreed, but the weight of this promise made her feel the gravity of the situation. Their farewell was filled with emotion and uncertainty. Padme, her eyes watering, felt her heart tighten at the risk Anakin was about to take. Ahsoka, with a mixture of pride and sadness, knew that this could be the last time she would see her master. Anakin, trying to remain calm, promised that he would return, but knew that his fate was uncertain. He said goodbye with a hug that conveyed all the trust and love he had for them both, before leaving for Coruscant. On arriving on Coruscant, Anakin met Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Windu. He announced his decision to confront the Emperor, saying that he believed it was time to fulfill his role as the Chosen One and restore the balance of the Force. Obi-Wan immediately disagreed, arguing that facing Palpatine alone was madness and that Anakin shouldn't risk his own life without a safer plan. Obi-Wan's concern was genuine, as he saw Anakin as a younger brother and feared losing him to the dark side or to death. However, Yoda interrupted, pondering that Anakin might have a real chance of success. The Emperor trusted Anakin, and this closeness could be the breakthrough they needed. Yoda's idea was simple but bold. If Anakin approached Palpatine as a potential ally, he could get the chance he needed to confront the Sith and destroy him once and for all. Windu, reflecting on Yoda's words, agreed that this was a unique opportunity, albeit an extremely dangerous one. Windu looked directly into Anakin's eyes and asked if he was aware of the risk he would be taking if something went wrong. Without hesitation, Anakin said that he understood the danger, but that he was willing to give his life to save the galaxy, especially since he could not accept his children growing up under the oppression of a dark empire. The future of generations depended on this battle, and Anakin knew that sacrifice was a fair price for freedom. With a seriousness that cut through the air, Windu then said something that would change the course of the Republic's history. "If I could, I would go in your place and give my life too. But this mission is yours. A life for the freedom of the entire galaxy is a fair price to pay. Do what you have to do." These words touched Anakin deeply, who realized the greatness and weight of his choice. He knew he wasn't just fighting for himself, but for an entire future that depended on his courage. The atmosphere in the room became tense, charged with the intensity of a decision that could change everything. Anakin nodded, aware of the gravity of what he was about to do and the trust that Windu, Yoda, and Obi-Wan placed in him. Anakin said goodbye to the Jedi Masters with a heavy heart, knowing that this could be the last time he would see his allies and friends. When he approached Obi-Wan, their gazes met, filled with respect and a deep sense of brotherhood. Obi-Wan, his voice firm and at the same time moved, said, "Take care, Anakin. May the Force be with you." Anakin, containing his emotions, replied, "May the Force be with you, Master." The final embrace between the two was brief but intense, marking the indestructible bond they had shared over the years, even if their paths now followed different destinies. After Anakin's departure, Mace Windu began to feel a growing unease. He knew of the dangers Anakin would face, but there was something beyond that, a feeling that the situation could become unexpectedly complicated. Feeling the Force more intensely, Windu turned to Yoda and shared his concern. Yoda, with his penetrating gaze, also sensed the disturbance in the Force. He asked Windu calmly, "Do you think you should?" Windu pondered for a moment before replying, "I feel he's going to need me." Yoda then nodded, allowing his old friend to follow his instinct. "Do what you think must be done, my friend." Determined, Windu set off in search of Anakin, determined to be there when he needed him most. Meanwhile, Anakin arrived where the Emperor was, requesting an urgent audience. Palpatine received him at a distance, surrounded by armed guards and attentive to every detail. Anakin approached and declared, with an expression of pain and resignation, that Ahsoka and Padme had died and that, with nothing left to tie him to that life, he was ready to offer his services. It was a test, and Anakin knew that any hesitation could be fatal. Palpatine, hiding his pleasure, replied that he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He knew that Anakin would be the perfect weapon to consolidate his power, but he still needed to be sure of his loyalty. In a cold, calculating voice, he asked Anakin if he was really willing to abandon everything to serve him, leaving behind his life as a Jedi, his ideals and any ties to the past. Anakin nodded, trying his best to hide his emotions and show total submission. In a subtle gesture, Palpatine signaled and some guards entered the room. Anakin was shocked to see who the guards were carrying. Mace Windu, with his hands and feet bound, was placed on his knees in front of him. Anakin had to contain his astonishment at seeing Windu in that situation, knowing that just a few moments ago they had been together, sharing the same purpose. Windu's gaze showed surprise, but also an unshakable firmness, as if he were prepared for whatever happened there. Palpatine, observing Anakin's every reaction, knew that he needed incontrovertible proof of his loyalty. He remembered that Anakin had spared Dooku, so hesitation could still be present. Then, in an incisive and cruel tone, Palpatine said, "Show that you are willing to leave your life as a Jedi behind. Kill him, become a Sith and rule the galaxy by my side." The Emperor's words were like a poison, a final test to ensure that Anakin was ready to plunge into the shadows once and for all. Anakin, overwhelmed by the pressure of the moment, stared at Windu with a conflicted look. He knew that killing Windu was a definitive act, a choice that could not be undone. But Windu, with an expression of unexpected tranquility, stared back at him, as if silently trying to communicate something. Feeling the weight of the decision, Anakin took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment in search of balance. Seeing Anakin's hesitation in the face of the crucial decision, Mace Windu, with a firm and serene gaze, asked, "Do you think that a life is a fair price to pay?" These words struck Anakin deeply, as if awakening in him the true meaning of sacrifice. He remembered his previous conversation with Windu, where the Jedi Master had told him that giving his life for the freedom of the galaxy was a fair price. Anakin got the message. Windu was willing to sacrifice his life so that he, as the chosen one, could fulfill his mission. With a heart full of courage and determination, Anakin raised his saber and positioned himself just as he had done when facing Count Dooku. In one swift, precise movement, he ended the life of one of the last living Jedi Masters. The decision was tough, but Anakin knew it was necessary to complete his cover and gain Palpatine's trust. He offered Windu the sacrifice for which the Jedi Master was willing, knowing that this act was part of a greater purpose. Palpatine, observing Anakin's action, cracked a subtle smile with an expression of grim satisfaction. "Good, good," he said, approaching Anakin with a look of approval. "Now you're ready." Palpatine, confident that he had finally won the loyal disciple he so desired, ordered Anakin to kneel before him. It was the moment the Emperor had been waiting for, the time to grant Anakin his new title as a Sith. As Anakin knelt, Palpatine placed his hand on his head and began to pronounce the words of his dark appointment. "Your name will now be Darth." But before he could finish, Anakin, in a swift and precise movement, stood up and activated his saber, delivering a deadly blow that split Palpatine in half. It was a calculated attack, planned at the last second, which caught the Emperor completely off guard and sealed the Sith Lord's fate. The guards in the room, in an act of defense, opened fire on Anakin. He tried to dodge the shots, but was unable to escape them all. Several lasers hit him and he fell next to Palpatine and Windu. There, on the floor of the hall, lay the Emperor and the two Jedi martyrs. Windu, who had offered his life to give Anakin a chance to complete his mission, and the Chosen One himself, who had fulfilled the prophecy by destroying the Sith and restoring balance to the Force, putting an end to the newly established Empire. The news of the Emperor's fall and Anakin's sacrifice spread quickly. Ahsoka and Padme were devastated by the tragic outcome, but felt immense pride knowing that Anakin had been responsible for bringing down the Empire. His sacrifice had not been in vain. He had fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One, restoring peace and saving the galaxy from the dark tyranny that threatened to overwhelm it. With Palpatine's death, order was restored and the Senate was able to regain control, beginning to rebuild the galaxy's political structure. Obi-Wan and Yoda took on the responsibility of restoring the Jedi Order, dedicating themselves to locating remaining Jedi scattered throughout the galaxy. They pledged to preserve the legacy of Anakin and Mace Windu, building a new generation of Jedi guided by the values of sacrifice, courage, and justice. Padme, now a widow, gave birth to the twins she was carrying. In the midst of her grief at the loss of Anakin, she found solace with Ahsoka, who remained on Naboo as her friend and confidant. Together, they created a safe home for Anakin's children, determined to keep them safe and honor their father's legacy of courage and sacrifice. The Chosen One's prophecy spread throughout the galaxy, becoming a legend of hope and redemption. Jedi and civilians from all corners of the universe heard about the heroic deeds of Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker, who gave their lives to ensure freedom and balance in the Force.